Marcus Williams checked his reflection one last time in the car mirror. His navy blue suit was pressed perfectly. His tie was straight. His shoes were polished until they shined. He had spent 10 years building his career as a software engineer. Today could be the day that changed everything. He grabbed his leather portfolio from the passenger seat. Inside were copies of his resume, letters of recommendation, and examples of his best work. Marcus had led major projects at 3 different Fortune 500 companies. He had designed systems that served millions of users. He knew he was qualified for this job. More than qualified. The building was modern and sleek. Glass windows stretched from the ground to the sky. A sign near the entrance read, "Tech Forward Solutions." Marcus took a deep breath and walked through the revolving doors. The lobby was bright and clean. A young woman sat at the reception desk. She looked up and smiled warmly. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I'm Marcus Williams. I have a 10 o'clock interview for the senior software engineer position." "Of course. Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." The receptionist handed him a visitor badge and gestured toward a waiting area with comfortable chairs. Marcus sat down and placed his portfolio on his lap. He glanced around the room. The walls displayed awards and photos of the company team. Everyone looked happy. This seemed like a good place to work. A door opened across the lobby. 2 people walked out. A woman in her mid-30s wore a gray business suit. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun. A man about the same age walked beside her. He wore an expensive-looking shirt and dark pants. They both carried tablets and coffee cups. The woman looked at the receptionist. "Is this our 10 o'clock?" "Yes, this is Marcus Williams." The woman's smile seemed to freeze on her face. The man's eyes moved up and down, looking at Marcus with an expression that was hard to read. They exchanged a quick glance with each other. Marcus noticed it, but tried to ignore the uncomfortable feeling in his stomach. "Mr. Williams," the woman said, her voice suddenly colder. "I'm Jennifer Hayes, and this is Derek Thompson. We're the recruiters handling this position. Follow us, please." Marcus stood and shook their hands. Jennifer's handshake was limp. Derek barely gripped his hand at all. They turned and walked quickly toward the door. Marcus followed them down a long hallway. The interview room was small with white walls. A table stood in the center with 3 chairs. A camera was mounted in the corner of the ceiling. A small red light blinked on it. Jennifer sat down and gestured for Marcus to sit across from her. Derek took the chair beside Jennifer. "So," Jennifer said, opening her tablet. "Marcus Williams. You went to Howard University?" "Yes, ma'am. I graduated with honors in computer science." Derek made a small sound. It might have been a laugh. "Interesting choice for a tech degree." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He knew what that comment meant. Howard was one of the best historically black colleges in the country. But some people had their own opinions about it. "Howard has an excellent computer science program," Marcus said calmly. "Many successful engineers graduated from there." "I'm sure," Jennifer said, but her tone suggested she thought otherwise. "Let's move on. Tell us about your experience at DataCorp." Marcus opened his portfolio and pulled out a document. "At DataCorp, I led a team of 8 engineers. We rebuilt their entire customer database system. The project reduced processing time by 40% and saved the company over $2 million annually." "You led a team of 8? Derek asked. His eyebrows went up. "At your age?" I was 31 at the time. I'd already been in the industry for 7 years. "Uh-huh." Derek made a note on his tablet. "And they just gave you a team to lead?" "Just like that?" Marcus took another deep breath. "I earned the position. I had successfully completed 3 major projects before that. My performance reviews were always excellent." Jennifer interrupted. "Let's talk about technical skills. Can you explain how you would design a scalable microservices architecture?" Finally, a real technical question. Marcus leaned forward. This was what he was good at. He began explaining the concepts clearly and thoroughly. He talked about service discovery, load balancing, and fault tolerance. He drew diagrams on the notepad they had given him. He referenced specific technologies and best practices, but Jennifer kept interrupting him. Yes, but what about," she would say, cutting him off mid-sentence. Derek would ask a question before Marcus finished answering the previous one. They seemed annoyed every time he demonstrated deep knowledge. "What about database optimization?" Derek asked. Marcus started to answer. Well, there are several approaches depending on the use case. First, you need to consider, we don't need a lecture, Jennifer said. Just answer the question. Marcus paused. He had been answering the question, but he kept his voice steady. For a large-scale application, I typically implement indexing strategies, query optimization, and caching layers. At my last position, I reduced database query times by 60% using these methods. 60%? Derek said. That seems exaggerated. I have documentation to prove it. Marcus reached for his portfolio again. That won't be necessary, Jennifer said quickly. Tell me, Mr. Williams, how do you handle pressure? This job can be very stressful. I've handled pressure throughout my career, meeting tight deadlines, managing unexpected problems, leading teams through difficult projects. I stay calm and focus on solutions. But have you ever worked in a truly fast-paced environment? Derek asked. Some people say they can handle pressure, but when they get here, they fold. Marcus felt his anger rising, but pushed it down. I've worked in fast-paced environments my entire career. Fortune 500 companies don't move slowly. I've never missed a deadline. I've never had a project fail. Jennifer and Derek looked at each other again, that look, that knowing glance that said things words wouldn't say. The interview continued for another 30 minutes. Every answer Marcus gave seemed to irritate them more. When he showed impressive knowledge, they acted skeptical. When he mentioned his achievements, they questioned whether he was telling the truth. They asked him the same questions multiple times as if trying to catch him in a lie. Marcus had been in many interviews before. He knew what a good interview felt like. This was not it. This felt like they had decided before he even walked into the room. Finally, Jennifer closed her tablet. Well, Mr. Williams, I think we have everything we need. We'll be in touch. When can I expect to hear back? Marcus asked. Within a week or two, Derek said. His tone made it clear there would be no call. Marcus stood and shook their hands again. Thank you for your time. He walked back down the hallway alone. The receptionist smiled at him as he passed. Have a good day, she said. You too, Marcus replied. He walked out of the building and across the parking lot to his car. He sat in the driver's seat and stared at the steering wheel. His hands were shaking slightly, not from nervousness, from frustration, from anger, from the exhaustion of staying professional when people treated him like he didn't belong. Marcus had answered every question perfectly. He had demonstrated expertise that most candidates wouldn't have. He had been polite and professional even when they were not. And he knew without any doubt that they would reject him. He started the car and drove home. The afternoon sun was bright, but Marcus barely noticed it. His mind kept replaying the interview. The looks, the interruptions, the doubt in their voices. He had felt this before, too many times to count. But it never got easier. When he pulled into his driveway, his wife Angela was working in the garden. She looked up and smiled, but her smile faded when she saw his face. She walked over as he got out of the car. How did it go? She asked. Marcus loosened his tie. I knew all the answers. I was perfect. And it didn't matter. Angela wrapped her arms around him. She didn't need to ask what he meant.
She had heard stories like this before.
They had been married for 8 years. She had seen him come home from interviews like this too many times. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know, Marcus said. Part of me wants to report them. But what good would it do? It's their word against mine. They'll say I just wasn't a good fit. You deserve better than this, Angela said. I know, Marcus replied. But deserving something and getting it are two different things. They walked into the house together. Marcus didn't know that the camera in that interview room had recorded everything. He didn't know that the recording system was still running after he left, and he definitely didn't know that his life was about to change in ways he never expected. Jennifer closed the door after Marcus left. She walked back to the table and dropped into her chair. Derek was already typing notes on his tablet. The small red light on the camera in the corner continued blinking. Neither of them paid attention to it. Well, that was a waste of time, Jennifer said. She kicked off her high heels under the table. Derek laughed. Did you see his face when I asked about Howard? I thought he was going to lose it. These people always have such thin skin, Jennifer said. She picked up her coffee cup and took a sip. He clearly didn't belong here. Obviously not. Derek leaned back in his chair. I don't know why we even have to interview candidates like that. We both know Tech Forward isn't that kind of company. Jennifer nodded. Exactly. We're doing them a favor, honestly. Can you imagine him trying to fit in here? The other engineers would eat him alive. Did you notice how he kept pulling out papers from that portfolio? Like he needed to prove everything he said was true. Derek mimicked Marcus pulling out documents, making an exaggerated show of it. Jennifer laughed loudly. Right, so desperate. And those claims about his achievements. 60% improvement on database queries, please. He probably just read that in some article somewhere. If he actually did anything at those other companies, he was probably riding on someone else's work, Derek said. You know how it goes. Companies have to meet their diversity quotas, so they bring people in and give them fancy titles. But the real engineers are doing all the work. Jennifer pulled out her laptop and opened it. I'll write up the rejection report right now. What should I say? Cultural fit issues? Perfect, Derek said. That's always safe. You can't argue with cultural fit. And I'll mention that he seemed unable to handle the pressure of our questions, Jennifer added as she typed. That he got defensive when we challenged his answers. Derek snorted. He did get defensive. So sensitive. We were just doing our jobs asking tough questions. If he can't handle an interview, how would he handle the actual work? Exactly my point, Jennifer said. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. I'll note that he lacks the communication skills we need. That he couldn't explain technical concepts clearly. Even though he wouldn't shut up about microservices, Derek said, going on and on like he was teaching a class. That's not the same as clear communication, Jennifer said. Clear communication means knowing your audience, knowing when to stop talking. He didn't get that. Derek stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the parking lot. You know what the real problem is? HR keeps sending us these candidates. They're so worried about looking inclusive that they waste our time with unqualified people. It's not just HR, Jennifer said. It's everyone. The whole industry has gone crazy with this diversity nonsense. Whatever happened to just hiring the best person for the job? We are hiring the best people, Derek said. That's why we filter out the ones who don't belong. Someone has to protect the company's standards. Jennifer finished typing and looked at her screen. There, rejection report complete. Marcus Williams, not recommended for hire. Reason: concerns about cultural fit, inability to perform under pressure, and insufficient communication skills for team collaboration. Beautiful, Derek said. How many is that this month? Jennifer thought for a moment. 4, I think, no 5. There was that guy last week with the accent. And the woman before that with the unusual name. We're doing good work, Derek said, keeping the quality high. That's why Tech Forward pays our firm so well. Speaking of which, Jennifer said, closing her laptop, we should celebrate. We've placed 15 people this quarter. That's a good bonus coming our way. Drinks after work? Derek suggested. Definitely. Jennifer slipped her shoes back on and stood up. Let me just upload this report to the system. She connected her laptop to the company network and uploaded the rejection report. The file went into the same system where the interview recording was stored. The camera in the corner had captured everything. Not just the interview with Marcus, but every word Jennifer and Derek had said afterward. The entire conversation was now saved in the cloud, waiting to be reviewed. But Jennifer and Derek didn't think about that. They had done this before, many times. They had developed a system over the past year of working together. Interview candidates who didn't fit their idea of what Tech Forward should look like, ask questions designed to make them uncomfortable, then write rejection reports with vague reasons that couldn't be challenged. Cultural fit, unable to handle pressure, poor communication skills. These phrases protected them. They sounded professional. No one could prove they meant something else. You know, Derek said as they gathered their things, I sometimes wonder if we're being too obvious. Like, what if someone notices the pattern? Jennifer waved her hand dismissively. No one pays attention to that stuff. As long as we use the right language in our reports, we're fine. Besides, the company wants results. We bring them qualified candidates who actually fit in. That's what matters. True, Derek said. And it's not like we're doing anything illegal. We're just making judgment calls about who would succeed here. That's literally our job. Exactly, Jennifer said. If people can't handle a tough interview, that tells us something important about them. We're actually helping the company avoid bad hires. They left the interview room, turning off the lights. The camera's red light continued blinking in the darkness. The recording system operated automatically, uploading everything to the cloud for quality assurance purposes. It was a new system the CEO had installed 3 months ago. Most employees didn't even know it existed. Jennifer and Derek walked back to the lobby. The receptionist was on the phone. They waved at her and headed out to their cars. "Same time tomorrow?" Derek asked. "We have 3 more interviews scheduled." "I'll be here," Jennifer said. "Let's hope tomorrow's candidates are better than today's." They drove away, already planning their evening. Neither of them gave another thought to Marcus Williams or the interview. It was just another day of work for them. Just another candidate filtered out. They had no idea that everything they had said was recorded. They had no idea that their words would soon be heard by someone who had the power to end their careers. Inside the building, the computer system processed the day's recordings. The artificial intelligence program analyzed the interview footage. It measured tone of voice, facial expressions, and behavior patterns. The AI had been trained to identify potential problems in the interview process: bias, discrimination, unprofessional conduct. Red flags appeared in Marcus Williams' interview file. The AI detected multiple concerning behaviors from the interviewers: interruptions, dismissive language, questions unrelated to job qualifications. The system flagged the recording for human review, but the really damaging evidence was in the post-interview conversation. The AI transcribed every word Jennifer and Derek had said. Words like "these people," phrases like "diversity nonsense," and "don't belong here." The system detected patterns that matched textbook examples of discriminatory language. The file was automatically sent to a priority queue for leadership review. It would appear on the CEO's dashboard the next time she logged into the system, along with similar flags from other recent interviews. Marcus Williams went home thinking his interview had been just another painful experience in a long career of them. Jennifer and Derek went to happy hour thinking they had successfully protected their company from an unqualified candidate. The receptionist finished her workday and went home to her family, and the recording sat in the cloud waiting. Digital evidence that could not be argued with, could not be explained away, could not be dismissed as a misunderstanding. In the parking lot, a few cars remained. Employees working late on projects, security guards making their rounds. The building looked peaceful in the early evening light. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed fine. But inside the computer system, the evidence was building. Not just from Marcus's interview, but from others. The AI had identified a pattern stretching back months. Candidates with certain backgrounds were rejected at much higher rates than others. Despite having similar or better qualifications, the data didn't lie. The next morning, the CEO would arrive early, as she always did. She would pour herself coffee and open her laptop. She would see a notification about flagged interview recordings. She would click on the file. And everything would change. But for now, on this evening, nobody knew what was coming. Marcus was home with his wife, trying to decide whether to report what had happened. Jennifer and Derek were laughing over drinks, talking about their plans for the weekend. The CEO was at a dinner meeting discussing the company's growth strategy. The truth was waiting, recorded, documented, impossible to deny. And soon, very soon, everyone would have to face it. Sarah Chen arrived at the office at 6:30 in the morning. She liked the quiet hours before everyone else came in. Time to think, time to plan, time to review the details that made the difference between a good company and a great one. She poured herself coffee from the machine in her office and sat down at her desk. Her laptop screen glowed to life. Emails, calendar notifications, reports waiting for review. Sarah had been CEO of Tech Forward Solutions for 3 years. She had built this company from a small startup into a successful business with over 200 employees. She opened the quarterly hiring report. Numbers and charts filled the screen. Positions filled. Time to hire. Cost per candidate. Sarah studied the data carefully. Something felt wrong. The recruiting firm they contracted, Elite Talent Solutions, had been working with them for 18 months. They handled the initial screening for most technical positions. The numbers looked good at first. Positions were being filled. Projects were moving forward. But when Sarah dug deeper into the diversity metrics, she noticed a problem. Candidates from minority backgrounds were being rejected at a much higher rate than others. Even when they had similar qualifications on paper, the pattern was too consistent to be random. Sarah frowned and made notes on her tablet. She pulled up the previous quarter's data. The same pattern. She went back further. 6 months ago, a year ago, The pattern started about the time Elite Talent Solutions began working with Tech Forward. She picked up her phone and called James Martinez, her head of HR. It was early, but James was always in the office by 7. "James, good morning. Can you come to my office?" "Be right there, boss." 3 minutes later, James walked in carrying his own coffee mug. He was 52 years old and had worked in human resources for 30 years. Sarah trusted his judgment completely. "Look at these numbers," Sarah said, turning her laptop screen toward him. "What do you see?" James studied the data. His expression grew serious. "That's a significant disparity in rejection rates." "Too significant," Sarah said. "I want you to pull the interview recordings for rejected candidates from the past 3 months. I want to see what's happening in these interviews." Tech Forward had installed an AI-powered interview analysis system 3 months ago. Every interview was recorded for quality assurance. The AI was supposed to flag potential problems, but Sarah hadn't spent much time reviewing the system. She had been focused on other priorities. Now she wondered what she had missed. "I'll get those files right away," James said. He returned to his office and began pulling the recordings. An hour later, Sarah's computer received a notification. 23 interview recordings were ready for review. Files flagged by the AI system as potentially problematic. Sarah felt a knot forming in her stomach. She decided to start with a random selection. She clicked on a file from 2 weeks ago. Marcus Williams, Senior Software Engineer position. She pressed play. Marcus appeared on screen. He looked professional and well-prepared. He answered the first few questions clearly and confidently. Then Sarah noticed the interviewers. Jennifer Hayes and Derek Thompson from Elite Talent Solutions. She had met them briefly when the contract was signed, but hadn't interacted with them much since. The more Sarah watched, the more uncomfortable she became. The interviewers kept interrupting Marcus. They made dismissive comments. They questioned obvious facts. When Marcus demonstrated impressive knowledge, they acted skeptical instead of impressed. Sarah's jaw tightened. This wasn't a professional interview. This was something else. Then Marcus left the room. Sarah was about to stop the recording when she noticed the interviewers were still talking. The camera was still recording. What happened next made Sarah's blood run cold. Jennifer's voice. "Well, that was a waste of time." Derek's laugh. "Did you see his face when I asked about Howard?" Sarah's hand moved to her mouth as she listened to the entire conversation. Every word, every laugh, every casual comment revealing exactly what they thought. The phrases, "these people," and "diversity nonsense." The admission that they had been filtering out candidates systematically. The complete lack of remorse or awareness of what they were doing. Sarah stopped the recording. She sat in silence for a full minute, trying to control her anger. Then she called James again. "Get legal in here now and bring Dr. Kim." Dr. Lisa Kim was their VP of Diversity and Inclusion. 20 minutes later, 3 people sat in Sarah's office. James from HR, David Goldman, the company's legal counsel, and Dr. Kim. All 3 looked concerned. "Watch this," Sarah said. She played the recording, all of it. The room was silent except for the voices from the laptop. When it finished, David spoke first. "This is actionable evidence of discriminatory hiring practices. Clear and unambiguous. How many other interviews are like this?" Dr. Kim asked. "I don't know yet," Sarah said. "But I need to find out. James, I want every recording from Elite Talent Solutions reviewed. Every single one from the past 18 months. "That's hundreds of recordings," James said. "Then we'll need help. Hire temporary staff if necessary. I want a complete audit by the end of next week." David cleared his throat. "Sarah, this is a serious legal situation. Not just for the recruiting firm, but potentially for us. We contracted them. We trusted them to represent our company. If this has been going on for 18 months, I know," Sarah said. "But we're going to fix it. Starting right now." "David, what's our liability?" "Depends on several factors. Did we know about this? Did we have systems in place to catch it? Did we act quickly when we discovered it?" David ticked off points on his fingers. "The good news is we have the AI system that flagged these issues. The bad news is it's been flagging them for months and no one reviewed them." "That's on me," Sarah said. "I should have been monitoring the system more closely. But we're going to make this right." Dr. Kim leaned forward. "We need to reach out to every candidate who was rejected by these recruiters. Offer them a chance to re-interview. With proper interviewers this time." "Agreed," Sarah said. "But first I need to call Marcus Williams, Personally, she found Marcus's phone number in the application system. It was 8:30 in the morning. She hoped it wasn't too early. The phone rang 3 times. Then a man's voice answered. "Hello? Is this Marcus Williams?" "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Sarah Chen. I'm the CEO of Tech Forward Solutions. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" There was a pause. "Okay," Sarah took a breath. "Mr. Williams, I watched your interview from yesterday. I watched all of it, including what happened after you left the room. I need to apologize to you on behalf of my company. What those recruiters said and did was completely unacceptable. It violated everything Tech Forward stands for." Another pause. Longer this time. "You watched it?" "We have an AI recording system for quality assurance. It captured everything. Mr. Williams, I want to offer you the senior software engineer position. Immediately. With a salary $20,000 higher than what was posted in the job description, plus a $50,000 signing bonus. And I want to personally guarantee that nothing like this will ever happen in my company again." Marcus didn't respond right away. Sarah could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. "I don't know what to say," Marcus finally said. His voice sounded thick with emotion. "You don't have to say anything right now. Take time to think about it. But I want you to know that I saw how qualified you are. I saw how professionally you handled an impossible situation. And I saw exactly what kind of people those recruiters are. They no longer represent Tech Forward." "That relationship ends today. They're fired?" Marcus asked. "Their entire firm is terminated, as of this moment. And I'm considering whether to pursue legal action against them." "I've been through so many interviews like that," Marcus said quietly. "I stopped reporting them because nothing ever changes. Companies always protect the people doing the hiring." "Not this time," Sarah said firmly. "Not in my company. Not ever again. Will you consider the offer?" "Yes," Marcus said. "Yes, I'll consider it. I need to talk to my wife, of course. Take all the time you need. And Mr. Williams, thank you for maintaining your dignity in that interview. You showed more professionalism than you received. That's exactly the kind of person we need at Tech Forward." After the call ended, Sarah sat back in her chair. James, David, and Dr. Kim were all watching her. "That was the right thing to do," Dr. Kim said. "It's not enough," Sarah replied. "We need to find every person who was treated this way. We need to fix our systems, and we need to make sure the entire company understands that this will never be tolerated. I'll start the audit immediately," James said. "I'll prepare the legal documentation for terminating the contract with Elite Talent Solutions," David added, "and I'll research our options for potential legal action. I'll draft new oversight protocols for all recruitment activities," Dr. Kim said, "and prepare training materials for every employee involved in hiring." Sarah nodded. "Good, now I need to call the owner of Elite Talent Solutions. This is going to be an unpleasant conversation." She found the number and dialed. A woman answered. "Elite Talent Solutions, this is Rebecca. This is Sarah Chen from Tech Forward. I need to speak with Mr. Bradley immediately. Let me see if he's available." A minute later, a man's voice came on the line. "Sarah, good morning. What can I do for you?" Marcus sat at his kitchen table staring at his phone. Angela stood behind him with her hands on his shoulders. He had just told her about the call from Sarah Chen. She had listened without interrupting, and now they both sat in stunned silence. "Did that really just happen?" Marcus asked. "I think it did," Angela said. She squeezed his shoulders. "Baby, someone actually listened. Someone actually did something." Marcus felt tears building in his eyes. He had been rejected from so many jobs. He had faced discrimination more times than he could count. He had learned to expect disappointment, but this was something completely different. "She apologized," Marcus said. "The CEO called me personally and apologized. What are you going to do?" Angela asked. Marcus looked up at his wife. "I'm going to say yes. I'm going to take the job." Angela smiled and hugged him from behind. "Good. You deserve this." Across town, Sarah Chen was preparing for the hardest meeting of her career. She had called an emergency all-hands meeting for 2 o'clock. Every employee would be there. She had to tell them what happened. She had to explain how the company had failed, and she had to promise them it would never happen again. But first, she had other calls to make. She dialed Marcus's number again. "Mr. Williams, it's Sarah Chen. Please call me Marcus." "Marcus, have you made a decision?" "Yes, I accept your offer." "Thank you." Sarah felt relief wash over her. "Thank you. Thank you for giving us a chance to make this right. Can you start Monday? I can start Monday. Perfect. I'll have HR send over all the paperwork today. And Marcus, I want you to know that you're not just getting a job. You're joining a company that's committed to real change. I hope you'll help us make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else. I'd like that, Marcus said. After ending the call, Sarah messaged James. Marcus Williams accepted. Get him everything he needs to start Monday. Expedite all paperwork. Then she turned her attention to Elite Talent Solutions. David had drafted a termination letter. Sarah read it carefully, made a few changes, and approved it. The letter was sent by email and certified mail. The contract was over. The relationship was finished. Her next call was to Robert Bradley, owner of Elite Talent Solutions. But this time she had David on the line with her. Robert, this is Sarah Chen again. My legal counsel, David Goldman, is also on this call. Sarah, I've been trying to reach you. We need to discuss this situation. There's nothing to discuss. The contract is terminated. But I want you to understand the severity of what your employees did. We have evidence of systematic discrimination. We're conducting a full audit of every candidate they rejected. If we find that qualified candidates were turned away because of bias, we'll consider legal action. My employees deny any wrongdoing. Jennifer and Derek say they were simply doing their jobs. They assessed candidates based on qualifications, David spoke up. Mr. Bradley, we have recordings of your employees making explicitly racist remarks. They admitted to filtering out candidates based on race. This isn't a matter of interpretation. It's documented fact. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Robert spoke, his voice quieter. I'll need to hear these recordings. We're under no obligation to share our evidence with you at this time, David said. But I'll tell you this. Your employees were caught on camera saying things that would end most careers. If this becomes public, your business is finished. This will ruin my company, Robert said. Your employees' actions may ruin your company, Sarah corrected. Not our response to those actions. You should have better systems in place to prevent this. You should have better training. You should have been monitoring their work. I'll deal with Jennifer and Derek immediately, Robert said. That's your business, Sarah replied. But understand this. We're reaching out to every candidate they rejected. We're offering them chances to re-interview. If even one of them wants to file a complaint or lawsuit, we won't stand in their way, and we'll cooperate fully with any investigation. After that call ended, Sarah checked the time. 1:30. She had 30 minutes before the all-hands meeting. She reviewed her notes one more time. She had to get this right. At 2 o'clock, the entire company gathered in the large conference room. People filled every chair. Others stood along the walls. Everyone looked curious and slightly concerned. Emergency all-hands meetings were rare. Sarah stood at the front of the room. She took a deep breath and began. Thank you all for coming. I need to tell you about something that happened in our company, something that violated our values and hurt people who trusted us. The room went completely silent. Everyone leaned forward. Sarah explained everything. The patterns in the hiring data, the recordings, the discrimination, the racist comments. She didn't name Marcus Williams to protect his privacy, but she explained what had been discovered. I take full responsibility for this, Sarah said. I hired Elite Talent Solutions. I trusted them to represent our company, and I didn't monitor them closely enough. That's on me, but I want you all to know what we're doing to fix this. She outlined the action plan, the terminated contract, the full audit, the new oversight systems, the mandatory training for anyone involved in hiring, the commitment to reach out to rejected candidates. I've also created an independent review board that will audit our recruitment processes every quarter, Sarah said, and we're establishing a confidential hotline where candidates can report discriminatory experiences directly to me. A hand went up in the back. It was Tom Chen, one of the senior engineers. What happened to the recruiters who did this? They no longer work with Tech Forward in any capacity. What happens to them at their own company is not my decision, but they will never represent us again. Another hand. Maya Patel from the design team. How do we know this won't happen again? You have my word, Sarah said. And more than that, you have systems, oversight, accountability, real consequences. But I also need your help. If any of you see or hear anything that concerns you in our hiring process, I want you to report it. Directly to me if necessary. The meeting lasted an hour. Sarah answered every question honestly. When it ended, employees left quietly, talking in small groups. Sarah knew some were shocked. Some were angry. Some were disappointed, but she hoped all of them understood that she was serious about change. That evening, Sarah worked with her communications team to draft a public statement. It was carefully worded but clear. Tech Forward Solutions is committed to inclusive hiring practices. We recently discovered that a contracted recruiting firm was not upholding our standards. We have terminated that relationship and are implementing enhanced oversight measures. We're reaching out to affected candidates and strengthening our commitment to diversity and equity. The statement went live on the company website and social media. Within hours, it was being shared and discussed. Tech industry blogs picked it up. Some praised Tech Forward's transparency. Others questioned why it had taken so long to discover the problem. But Sarah wasn't done. She personally called 10 candidates who had been rejected by Jennifer and Derek. 10 people whose qualifications were strong, but who had been turned away with vague reasons. She apologized to each of them. She offered them chances to re-interview with different interviewers. She listened to their stories. Some were angry. Some were hurt. Some were skeptical that anything would really change. But most appreciated the call. Most agreed to give Tech Forward another chance. One woman, a software engineer named Keisha Johnson, told Sarah something that stayed with her. "I've been rejected from a lot of jobs," Keisha said, "but this is the first time anyone ever called to apologize. The first time anyone admitted something was wrong. That means something." By Friday, the audit was complete. James Martinez presented his findings to Sarah. Out of 83 candidates rejected by Elite Talent Solutions over 18 months, 37 were people of color. 28 of those 37 had qualifications equal to or better than white candidates who were approved. The pattern was undeniable. It was systematic. It was exactly what Jennifer and Derek had admitted to doing. Sarah made another decision. "I want to offer every one of those 37 people a formal apology in writing, and I want to invite all of them to re-interview. Not just for the positions they originally applied for, but for any current openings that match their skills." Dr. Kim nodded approvingly. "That's the right approach. It shows we're serious." "I want our company to be better than this," Sarah said. "I want us to be a place where talent is recognized regardless of who you are or what you look like. These people deserved better from us." Over the weekend, letters went out. 37 letters of apology, 37 invitations to interview again. Each letter was signed personally by Sarah. On Monday morning, Marcus Williams walked through the doors of Tech Forward Solutions. This time everything was different. The receptionist greeted him warmly and handed him an employee badge with his name on it. Sarah herself came down to meet him. "Welcome to Tech Forward," she said, shaking his hand. "Thank you for the opportunity," Marcus replied. Sarah walked him to his new team. 8 engineers looked up as they approached. Sarah made introductions and Marcus shook hands with each person. They seemed genuinely happy to meet him. One engineer, a woman named Rachel, showed him to his workspace. Jennifer Hayes stared at her computer screen in disbelief. The email from Robert Bradley was short and direct. She was fired, effective immediately. Security would escort her from the building. She had 30 minutes to pack her personal belongings. Her hands shook as she read the message again. This couldn't be happening. She had been one of the top recruiters at Elite Talent Solutions. She had placed more candidates than anyone else in the firm. She made the company money. How could they fire her? She grabbed her phone and called Derek. He answered on the first ring. "Did you get the email?" she asked. "Yeah," Derek said. His voice sounded hollow. "I'm packing my stuff right now. Security is standing right here watching me." "This is insane," Jennifer said. "We didn't do anything wrong. We were just screening candidates like we always do." Robert said Tech Forward has recordings of us talking after interviews. Jennifer felt her stomach drop. "What, how?" "Their AI system. It kept recording after candidates left. They heard everything we said." Jennifer's mind raced back through the conversations she and Derek had after interviews. All the comments, all the jokes, all the honest opinions they had shared, everything they had said when they thought no one was listening. "Oh God," she whispered. "Yeah," Derek said. "We're screwed." Within 2 days, the story spread through the recruiting industry. Tech Forward had terminated their contract with Elite Talent Solutions after discovering evidence of discriminatory hiring practices. The details were vague in public statements, but people in the industry talked. Word got around. Other companies that worked with elite talent solutions started asking questions. A large financial services firm requested an audit of all candidates Elite had rejected for them. A healthcare technology company did the same. A startup pulled their contract immediately, not wanting to be associated with the controversy. Robert Bradley tried to save his company. He fired Jennifer and Derek publicly. He released a statement condemning their actions. He promised new training and oversight. But the damage was done. 3 more corporate clients ended their contracts within a week. 2 others demanded financial compensation for the liability exposure. Jennifer and Derek both tried to find new jobs, but their names were out there now. Other recruiting firms had heard what happened. No one wanted to take the risk. Jennifer applied to 6 companies. She got 1 interview. The hiring manager looked uncomfortable the entire time. "I have to ask," the manager said. "What happened at Elite Talent Solutions?" "There was a misunderstanding," Jennifer said. "Some comments were taken out of context. Can you explain the context that would make those comments appropriate?" Jennifer didn't have an answer. She didn't get the job. Derek had similar experiences. Companies would schedule phone screens, then suddenly cancel. One HR manager was honest with him. "Look, we Googled your name. We saw the news. We can't take that kind of risk right now." "But I was good at my job," Derek protested. "Maybe you were," the HR manager said. "But good at what exactly? That's the question people are asking." Meanwhile, Marcus Williams was thriving at Tech Forward. His first month had been incredible. He solved a critical security problem that had been bothering the team for weeks. He mentored 2 junior engineers who were struggling with a complex project. He brought ideas that made the entire development process more efficient. His team loved working with him. During lunch one day, Rachel told him, "You know what's great about you? You actually listen. You don't just wait for your turn to talk. You hear what we're saying and build on it." "That's just good teamwork," Marcus said. "You'd be surprised how rare it is," Stephen, the team lead, replied. "We've had people who thought they knew everything. You actually collaborate." At the end of his first month, Sarah called Marcus into her office. He felt a moment of anxiety. "Was something wrong?" "Sit down, Marcus," Sarah said, gesturing to a chair. "I want to talk to you about your performance." "Okay," Marcus said carefully. "You've been here 1 month and you've already made a significant impact. The security vulnerability you identified could have cost us millions if it had been exploited. Your work has been exceptional." Marcus felt relief wash over him. "Thank you. I'm just doing my job." "You're doing more than that," Sarah said. "And I want you to know that we see it. You're exactly the kind of person we need here. I'm promoting you to lead architect on the new cloud migration project." "After 1 month?" Marcus asked in surprise. "Talent is talent," Sarah said. "You've proven yourself. The team respects you. You have the skills. Why wait?" Marcus left Sarah's office feeling like he was floating. A promotion. After 1 month. Because of his actual work. Because of his actual skills. Not because someone was trying to fill a quota or check a box. Because he had earned it. That evening, he called Angela from the car. "They promoted me. Already? Baby, that's amazing." "I know, I can't believe it. This is what it's supposed to feel like. Working somewhere that actually values you." Back at Tech Forward, the changes Sarah had implemented were having effects throughout the company. The mandatory anti-bias training had been completed by everyone involved in hiring. The training was intense and uncomfortable. It forced people to examine their own assumptions and behaviors. Some employees pushed back. One engineering manager complained to HR. "Why do we have to do this? I've never discriminated against anyone." The HR trainer responded calmly, "If you've never discriminated, this training will only reinforce what you already do right." But discrimination often happens unconsciously. The training helps us recognize patterns we might not see in ourselves. Dr. Kim also established the Independent Review Board. 5 people from different departments would review hiring data every quarter. They would look for patterns. They would flag concerns. They would ensure the company stayed accountable. The confidential hotline for candidates was set up. Information about it was added to every job posting and interview confirmation email. In the first month, 3 calls came in. 1 was a false alarm. 1 revealed an interviewer who was consistently late and unprepared. The 3rd uncovered a hiring manager who was asking inappropriate personal questions. Each issue was addressed immediately. The unprepared interviewer received coaching. The hiring manager was removed from the interview process and required to complete additional training. Sarah made it clear that problems would not be ignored. Meanwhile, the audit had identified 37 candidates who deserved a second chance. 22 of them agreed to re-interview. 15 of those were hired into various positions. Each one brought skills and perspectives that enriched their teams. One of those new hires was Keisha Johnson, the woman who had told Sarah that no one had ever apologized before. Keisha joined the data analytics team. Within 2 weeks, she identified an error in their customer segmentation model that had been skewing results for months. Her fix saved the company from making poor strategic decisions based on bad data. "How did no one catch this before?" Keisha's manager asked. "Sometimes you need fresh eyes," Keisha said. "Someone who sees the problem from a different angle." The story of what happened at Tech Forward began to spread beyond the company. A business journalist wrote an article titled, "How One CEO Turned Hiring. Discrimination into Systemic Change." The article praised Sarah's swift action but also asked tough questions about why the problem existed in the first place. Sarah agreed to an interview. "I'm not a hero," she told the journalist. "I'm a CEO who failed to properly monitor contractors who represented my company. What I'm trying to do now is fix that failure and prevent it from happening again." "But you took action when many companies would have covered it up," the journalist pointed out. "Covering it up would have been wrong," Sarah said simply, "and ultimately it would have hurt my company. Diverse teams are stronger teams. Innovation comes from different perspectives. By allowing discrimination, even unknowingly, I was limiting our potential." The article went viral in tech industry circles. Sarah received emails from other CEOs asking about the systems she had implemented. 2 consulting firms reached out, wanting to help other companies adopt similar approaches. A national diversity in tech organization invited her to speak at their annual conference. But not everyone was supportive. Some online comments criticized her for virtue signaling. Others said she was overreacting. A few suggested that maybe Jennifer and Derek had been right to filter candidates based on cultural fit. Sarah ignored the negative comments. She focused on the work, on building a better company, on creating an environment where people like Marcus could thrive. 3 months after Marcus started, Sarah gathered the company for another all-hands meeting. This time the mood was different. Less tense, more curious. "I want to give you an update on the changes we've implemented," Sarah began. She reviewed the statistics. 22 new hires from the re-interview process. 0 discrimination complaints filed through the hotline that were substantiated. Improved diversity numbers across all departments. And perhaps most importantly, higher employee satisfaction scores. "The engineers who joined us through the re-interview process have already contributed significantly," Sarah said. "They've identified problems, proposed solutions, and brought new perspectives that have made us better. This is proof that our previous system wasn't just unfair, it was bad for business." After the meeting, several employees approached Sarah. They thanked her for taking the situation seriously. They shared their own stories of discrimination at previous companies. They said they were proud to work at Tech Forward. One senior developer, an immigrant from India, pulled Sarah aside. "I've worked in tech for 15 years, he said. "I've seen a lot of companies talk about diversity. You're the first CEO I've seen actually do something about it." "Thank you." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility. This couldn't be a one-time thing. The changes had to last. The commitment had to be real. She had to make sure that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, Tech Forward would still be a place where talent was recognized regardless of who you were. As she walked back to her office that evening, she passed by the engineering area. Marcus was at his desk, working late on the cloud migration project. 2 other engineers sat with him, collaborating on a problem. They were laughing about something, completely comfortable with each other. That's what it should look like, Sarah thought. That's what we're building. She didn't know that across town, Jennifer Hayes was sitting in her apartment, applying for her 20th job since being fired. Each application felt more hopeless than the last. Each rejection email stung a little more. She had time now to think about what she had done, to realize that her actions had consequences, not just for the candidates she rejected, but for herself. Derek had given up on recruiting entirely. He was working at a call center now, taking customer service calls for minimum wage. It was humiliating after years of being a talent expert, but no one in recruiting would hire him. His reputation was destroyed. Sometimes consequences are the only way people learn, and sometimes, just sometimes, companies actually change. Not because they have to, not because they're forced, but because leaders decide to do the right thing, even when it's hard. 6 months had passed since that terrible interview. Marcus Williams stood in front of a conference room full of engineers, presenting the completed cloud migration project. The presentation was going perfectly. Every slide showed the success of the work his team had accomplished. Cost savings of 30%. Performance improvements of 50%. Zero downtime during the migration. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Sarah Chen stood and walked to the front. "This is exactly why we hire the best people," she said, looking at Marcus. "And why we make sure we don't miss them because of bias or discrimination. Marcus, you've exceeded every expectation." "Thank you," Marcus smiled. He thought back to that day 6 months ago when he sat in his car after the interview, feeling defeated and exhausted. He never could have imagined this moment. Not just the success of the project, but the feeling of being valued, of being seen for who he really was. After the presentation, Marcus returned to his desk. An email notification appeared on his screen. It was from a young man named James Carter, a computer science student at Howard University. James had heard Marcus speak at a career fair the previous month. The email read, "Mr. Williams, thank you for talking with me at the career fair. Your story inspired me to keep pushing forward even when things get hard. I wanted you to know that I just accepted an internship at Tech Forward for the summer. I hope I can work with you and learn from you." Marcus felt emotion rise in his chest. He was becoming the mentor he wished he had when he was starting out. The person who could show young engineers of color that they belonged in this industry, that they could succeed, that there were companies that would value them. He replied to James immediately. "Congratulations on the internship. I look forward to working with you. Come find me on your first day. I'll introduce you to the team." That evening, Marcus went home to Angela. She was in the kitchen preparing dinner. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Good day?" she asked. "Really good day," Marcus said. "The project presentation went perfectly. And I got an email from a student who's joining us as an intern, someone I met at a career fair." Angela turned to face him. "Look at you being an inspiration." "I'm just doing my job," Marcus said. "No," Angela said firmly. "You're doing more than that. You're changing things for the people who come after you. That matters." Across town, Sarah Chen was preparing for an awards ceremony. The National Technology Diversity Initiative was giving her their Leadership Award for her response to the discrimination incident. She had tried to decline the award, feeling uncomfortable being celebrated for fixing a problem that should never have existed. But the organization insisted. "You're being honored not for having a perfect company," the director told her, "but for showing how leaders should respond when they discover problems. Most companies would have buried this. You brought it into the light and fixed it. That's worth recognizing." Now Sarah stood backstage waiting to go on. She could hear the crowd in the auditorium. 500 people from companies across the country. She was nervous. Public speaking wasn't her favorite thing. But this message was important. Her name was called. She walked onto the stage, accepted the award, and stood at the podium. The audience quieted. "Thank you for this honor," Sarah began. "But I want to be clear about something. 6 months ago, I discovered that my company had been systematically discriminating against qualified candidates for 18 months, on my watch. That's not something to be proud of." The audience listened intently. "What happened at Tech Forward happened because I trusted the wrong people and didn't monitor them closely enough. It happened because I was focused on growth and profit and not enough on the systems that mattered. It happened because discrimination can hide in plain sight when we're not actively looking for it." Sarah paused and looked out at the crowd. "But when I discovered what was happening, I had a choice. I could minimize it. I could quietly fix it without anyone knowing. Or I could face it head on and use it as an opportunity to become better." She explained the actions Tech Forward had taken. The immediate termination of the discriminatory recruiters, the personal apologies to affected candidates, the systemic changes to prevent future problems, the commitment to ongoing oversight and accountability. "The result has been remarkable," Sarah continued. "Not just in our diversity numbers, though those have improved significantly, but in the quality of our work. The people we almost missed because of bias have become some of our most valuable employees. They've brought perspectives and skills that have made us more innovative and more successful. She told them about Marcus without using his name, about how he had identified a critical security vulnerability in his first month, about how he had been promoted to lead architect and successfully completed a major project, about how he was now mentoring the next generation. "That's what we almost lost," Sarah said. "That's what discrimination costs companies. Not just the legal liability or the reputation damage, but the talent, the innovation, the excellence. When we reject people based on bias rather than merit, we make ourselves weaker." The audience applauded. After the speech, several CEOs approached Sarah. They wanted to know more about the systems she had implemented. They admitted they worried their own companies might have similar problems. "Start by looking at your data," Sarah told them. "Look for patterns in who gets hired and who gets rejected. And create real accountability, not just policies on paper, but actual oversight and consequences. Change only happens when leaders make it happen." One CEO, a woman from a large tech company, said something that stuck with Sarah. "You know what's interesting? You're being celebrated for doing what should be normal, for treating people fairly, for fixing problems when you find them. That says something about our industry, doesn't it?" Sarah nodded. "It does. And it means we all have work to do." Meanwhile, the ripple effects of what happened at Tech Forward continued to spread. Elite Talent Solutions, the recruiting firm that had employed Jennifer and Derek, had lost 70% of its clients. Robert Bradley was trying to rebuild the company with new staff and new policies. But the damage to the firm's reputation was severe. Jennifer Hayes had finally found a job. Not in recruiting. She was working as an administrative assistant at a small company. The pay was half what she used to make. She had time to think about her choices, about the people she had hurt, about the career she had destroyed through her own actions. One evening, she saw an article about Sarah Chen receiving the Leadership Award. She read about the changes at Tech Forward. She read about candidates who had been given second chances and had gone on to excel, and she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel before: genuine remorse. She thought about Marcus Williams, though she didn't know his name, the man she had dismissed and mocked, the man whose qualifications she had questioned, despite clear evidence of his excellence. She wondered where he was now. If he had found another opportunity, if he was okay, she would never know that he was thriving, that he had been promoted, that he was changing lives as a mentor, that he had gotten everything he deserved despite her best efforts to stop him. Derek Thompson had left the recruiting industry entirely. He was working in retail management. It was honest work, but every day was a reminder of how far he had fallen. He saw his former colleagues on LinkedIn, posting about their success. He wasn't connected to them anymore. Most had unfriended him after the scandal. He thought about trying to reach out to Tech Forward to apologize. But what would he say? "Sorry I discriminated against your candidates. Sorry I got caught." He knew any apology would sound hollow. So he stayed silent and lived with the consequences. Back at Tech Forward, Marcus was settling into his role as a mentor. James Carter, the intern from Howard, had started the previous week. Marcus took him to lunch on his first day. "How's it going so far?" Marcus asked. "It's amazing," James said, his eyes bright with excitement. "Everyone has been so welcoming. I was nervous about being an intern here, but people actually listen to my ideas. They treat me like I belong." "You do belong," Marcus said. "Don't ever forget that. Your ideas matter. Your perspective matters. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." "Did you ever doubt yourself?" James asked. "Like, did you ever feel like maybe you didn't belong in tech?" Marcus thought about how to answer. He could give the easy response. Say everything had always been fine, but that wouldn't be honest, and James deserved honesty. "All the time," Marcus said. "I've been in interviews where people questioned every qualification I had. I've been in meetings where my ideas were ignored until someone else repeated them. I've been passed over for jobs I was perfect for. It's hard. But here's what I learned. The problem wasn't me. The problem was the places and people that couldn't see my value." "How did you keep going?" James asked. "Because I knew I was good," Marcus said. "I knew my skills were real, and I knew that eventually I would find a place that recognized that. It took time. It took patience. But I found it. At Tech Forward?" "At Tech Forward," Marcus confirmed. "And part of why I'm here is to make sure people like you don't have to wait as long as I did. To make sure the next generation has it a little bit easier." 3 months later, at the end of his internship, James received a full-time job offer from Tech Forward. He called Marcus immediately. "I got it. They offered me a job after graduation." Marcus felt pride swell in his chest. "Congratulations. You earned it. Thank you for everything," James said. "For the mentorship. For the advice. For showing me it was possible." "You did the work," Marcus said. "I just helped you see the path." That evening, Marcus and Angela celebrated at their favorite restaurant. They reflected on how much had changed in less than a year. "You know what's funny?" Marcus said. "That terrible interview led to this. If Jennifer and Derek hadn't been so blatantly discriminatory, if they hadn't been recorded, I might have just gotten another rejection. But because Sarah Chen actually cared enough to investigate and act, everything changed. Not just for you," Angela pointed out. "For a lot of people. All those candidates who got second chances. The interns and new hires who now work at a company with real accountability. The other companies that saw what happened and started examining their own practices." Marcus nodded. One moment. One decision by one CEO to do the right thing. And it created all of this. Sarah Chen was thinking something similar as she reviewed the year-end reports. Tech Forward's diversity numbers had improved dramatically. Employee satisfaction was at an all-time high. Productivity was up. Innovation was up. And perhaps most importantly, they had created a culture where people felt safe and valued. The scholarship program Sarah had created in partnership with Howard University and other HBCUs had just awarded its first grants. 10 students would receive full funding for their computer science degrees, plus guaranteed internships at Tech Forward. One of those students was a young woman who wrote in her application, "I want to be an engineer, but I'm worried about whether I'll be accepted in the tech industry." Seeing what Tech Forward did, how they took action against discrimination, gave me hope that there are companies where I can belong. Sarah read that letter 3 times. This was why the work mattered. Not just to fix the past, but to build the future. A year after that fateful interview, Sarah organized an event at Tech Forward. She invited all the employees who had been hired through the re-interview process. 22 people gathered in the conference room. Sarah looked at them and felt overwhelmed with emotion. "I asked you all here because I want to say thank you," Sarah began. "A year ago, my company failed you. We allowed discrimination to happen. We missed your talent because we trusted the wrong people, but you gave us a second chance. You came back. You took a risk on us, and you've made Tech Forward better in every way." She went around the room, highlighting each person's contributions. The security vulnerabilities identified. The innovations proposed. The mentorship provided. The culture improved. Every single person had made an impact. Marcus raised his hand. "Can I say something?" "Of course," Sarah said. Marcus stood. "I speak for everyone here when I say thank you to you. You could have buried this. Most companies would have. But you brought it into the light. You took action. You created real change. That's rare. And it means everything to us." The room broke into applause. Several people wiped away tears. This wasn't just about jobs. It was about dignity, about being seen, about knowing that someone in power cared enough to fight for what was right. After the event, Marcus walked back to his desk. His computer screen showed his calendar. Tomorrow he was presenting at a tech conference about inclusive team building. Next week he had a meeting with 3 other engineers of color at Tech Forward to discuss forming an employee resource group. Next month he was scheduled to visit Howard University to speak to students about careers in tech. His phone buzzed. A text from Angela. "Proud of you. Love you," he smiled and replied, "Love you too. See you tonight." Marcus looked around the office. Engineers from different backgrounds worked together, collaborated, laughed together. This was what it was supposed to be like. This was what was possible when discrimination was confronted instead of ignored. He thought about where he had been a year ago, sitting in his car after that interview, wondering if anything would ever change, exhausted from fighting the same battles over and over. Ready to give up. He was glad he hadn't given up. He was glad Sarah Chen had found that recording. He was glad one person in power had decided to do the right thing. Because that one decision had changed everything, not just for him, but for everyone who came after. Marcus opened his laptop and got back to work. He had a project deadline approaching, a mentee who needed feedback, an intern who had questions, a career that was flourishing, a purpose that meant something. And somewhere across the country, a young black student was reading about Marcus's story and thinking, Maybe I can do this too. Maybe there's a place for me in tech. That student would apply to Tech Forward's internship program. That student would get accepted. That student would one day have their own story of success. The cycle would continue. One person helping the next. One leader's decision creating opportunities for thousands. One company's choice to do better inspiring others to follow. Change was possible. It required courage. It required accountability. It required leaders willing to face uncomfortable truths and take meaningful action. But it was possible. Marcus had learned that lesson the hard way. But now he was living proof that when companies get it right, everyone wins. Not just the people who get opportunities they deserve, but the companies that get the talent and innovation they need, the industry that becomes more creative and dynamic, the world that benefits from diverse perspectives solving complex problems. That interview with Jennifer and Derek had been one of the worst experiences of Marcus's career. But what came after? That had been worth fighting for. That had been worth believing in. That had made all the difference.